Good evening, or afternoon, or morning, or wherever you are. Hello, howdy, and welcome to Johnny Has the Keys, a podcast about horror, science fiction, literature, movies, television, all the things that influenced us, that bothered us, that we love, that we hate, everything. My name is David, and I'm here with my great friend Tim. Tim, how are you?
I'm good, David. Welcome to Time Infinite, where it can be morning, afternoon, or evening,
Correct.
whenever.
Anytime you listened to the podcast, it's that time. So what's that old line? No matter where you are, no matter where you go, there you are. From Buckaroo Banzai. You
Yeah.
know.
hmm
What have you been doing? What have you been up to this week?
Oh, well, I have been diving into a few new things. I finally started Fargo, but the one Fargo season three, that is.
Ah,
The one thing I wanted to talk about though is that I finally caught up with Into the Spider-Verse, the latest Spider-Man animated movie.
yes.
Have you seen
I
it?
have not.
Okay.
I'm not a
Um,
huge Spidey fan in general, although I do think that um, the new Spider-Man is much better than Tobey was. I liked Tobey Maguire and I liked Sam's movie, but um, I think the new guy is a lot better and more perfect for Peter Parker, sort of thing. The one from
mhm.
the new one from Marvel. But I haven't seen any of the. I've heard Spider-Verse is good by fans, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's exceptional. I'm more of a traditionalist because I stopped reading Marvel back in the 80s. So I'm more familiar with the original stories from the 60s through the 80s. And what's great about this movie is that it touches on many, many different levels and I guess worlds with Spider-Man. So
Hmm.
there is the Peter Parker universe as well as all these other universes because it's kind of a lot like Stranger Things if you want a key, where a lot of different dimensions meet, and so there's traveling between them.
Hmm. Okay.
So, and the animation is great. I mean, when they touch upon things like, I say, the original Spider-Man cartoon, the animation will kind of shift into that animation. Same with the comic books. Same with like one of the Spider-Men is a little girl with a big robot from like a Japanese, how you say that,
And
Japanese animation,
yeah.
and her animation matches her.
Oh, okay.
So it's that kind of thing. I mean, it's kind of a geek's heaven as far as, especially an animation geek heaven,
Okay. So it's a nerd
because there's
fest.
so much going on. Yeah, it is, and it cost them like 90 million to make, which I thought was expensive, and then I saw where The Incredibles cost 92, but it's made over 400, so I mean, I'm sure they're okay with it.
Yeah, but that seems odd to me because 92 for The Incredibles, but The Incredibles is like all CGI animation, right? It's like really
I
so
think
so
so.
is this
I mean,
is this computer generated as well or I'm assuming it's not cell animation, but
I am what I'm a friend with I'm friends with I work with actually an animator at my day job, and he told me, and I didn't get the specifics, but there's parts of it that look a little fuzzy in the peripheral to me that annoyed me a little bit, and he said that it had to do with them trying to make it look comic book with little tiny dots.
little
So,
tiny dots. Okay.
and I'm assuming that's done with a computer. I don't think it's hand painted, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's different elements of every kind of animation in it, just because of the of what I told you as far as the
Style.
different backgrounds.
Okay.
Yeah, different styles, exactly.
Huh.
So,
Okay.
but I would check it out. I mean, it's a new story with new Spider-Mans. Peter Parker does exist. The villains do exist, so you will have some familiarity with it. They may look a little different.
Yeah.
It's got a great cast. Lily Tomlin plays Aunt May.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, and like Nicolas Cage is Spider-Man Noir, which is a Spider-Man from a universe that's only in black and white and wears like a trench coat and a hat,
Okay.
which is kind of cool. And then I can't think of the comedian's name, but there's a comedian that plays a Spider-Man that comes from kind of a Warner Brothers universe where he's a pig in a Spider-Man costume and he's comedic,
Oh my
kind of
gosh.
like a Roadrunner type
Okay.
thing. Yeah. So you see what I'm saying? It's all over the board as far as the animation world. So yeah, I highly recommend it. I mean, I enjoyed it. I sat
Okay.
there, cheering him.
Well,
So
I will give it a look and see. Although, again, I was never a big comic book reader, and I'm definitely not a big Spider-Man knowledge person. But
mhm.
maybe that'd be cool to get my perspective then, since I am not.
Yeah, and
So,
and even though it's a Sony movie in partnership with Marvel, there is an Easter egg at the end that I highly encourage everybody to check out for sure.
yeah, I think I read something about that just on a friend's page or something on Facebook, and they said, "Wow, the ending, that post-credit scene in Spider-Man. Wow, you know." So interesting.
Yeah. Well, what about you? What's been going on in your
Nothing.
week?
I've had some downtime, so I've been able to do some stuff. Work on some local theater and all of that, but also catch up on some things. And I guess my only thing I wanted to mention this week as an offshoot, I guess, of our podcast was um, there's a lot of change coming in the whole digital world or the whole streaming world with Apple coming up with its own channel and Disney's going to come up with its own channel, and so it's just going to turn into cable again, just in a different format. Um, but I really wanted to
Content wars.
yeah, I really wanted to
Yeah.
to praise again Netflix. I think Netflix has revolutionized the entertainment industry in general. Films, television, cable, everything. I mean, they destroyed Blockbuster. And then they've just continued to go. And I think they've continued to go because of content. And I posted an article recently online about um, big mega corporations and conglomerates and the fact that they lose creativity. And I've always agreed with that. I know you and I may be on opposite sides of the thing with regards to Disney, but I think that Disney tends to rely on old, stale stuff rather than do new things. And I think they tend to create their pieces based on analytics and data and everything else rather than just giving an artist a chance to go and do something and experiment and be different. And not just Disney, a lot of megacorps. Fox was the same way and everything else. Um, but
I think there's a reason for that, though.
okay.
I think Disney tries to keep properties that are evergreen, so that if they do a theme park, it's still relevant. So I can see what their business model is when it comes to that.
Yes.
But they do step out of the box every once in a while and do something spectacular.
Yes.
I can't, think of one right off the top of my
Of
head, but I'm
course you
sure
can.
they've had
No.
several. Snow White in itself was spectacular when it came out. And then when they did The Lion King, I mean, that was supposedly an original story. I've been told otherwise, but that was spectacular too.
Okay, but
I mean, they have their moments.
yeah, they do have their moments, but to me their moments tend to be, 20, 30 years ago. Or
Right. A lot
before.
of it now is. Yeah.
Everything
And that's
now
because of their business
Yeah,
model.
everything now tends to be, I need a franchise, I need a tent pole, I need multiples, or I need a reboot. And as
Hmm.
I think we said on other previous podcasts, I'm really disappointed in Disney now because now it's like they suddenly decided, oh, the only movies we're going to make are live action versions of our cartoons, of our animated
Yeah,
ones.
that's sad.
And that's sad, and also make some money off Star Wars and, make some
Well,
money off everything else we're buying kind of thing.
well, and
Um,
considering what I was just talking about, I mean, how revolutionary that new Spider-Man movie is. Well, that's animation, guys. You can go back to
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
but my praise really is about Netflix and the fact that Netflix has tried new things. I have seen more original works and better film series everything on Netflix than I have anywhere else in the past few years. They
Hmm.
do strange works that you've never heard of before, or if another, a great example, we've talked about this too, The Expanse, which started on sci-fi, but was
Hmm.
totally not a sci-fi, like you normally get used to a sci-fi property. Um,
Hmm.
it was an incredibly well done series. Then when it got canceled by Sci-Fi, Netflix bought it, and now they're producing 2 new seasons of it. And they've done that with
Hmm.
other things where they've rescued shows, so to speak, but also just their original content and the stuff that they're doing. Um,
Right.
Mindhunter is the one, I can't wait for the second season of that is coming because the first one was so
It's
incredible.
already started.
Yeah, and it was great. Um,
No, I mean it's already. I think the second season started. We're dating ourselves, considering that it's fall.
shh, don't mention
It
that.
started Saturday.
Shh, don't. Oh, now
um,
you've ruined it. Now everybody knows.
now they know your secret identity.
Oh
No,
no, Spider-Man, put your mask back on.
yeah, Dennis actually mentioned the other night that he would not mind watching that. We just got this is how far behind we are. We just watched that OJ series that Ryan Murphy did,
Yeah.
and he mentioned everyone's talking about this Mindhunter show, and I said, you know what? I watched the first 4 episodes and it was great, and I never finished it. I said, if you want, we'll start it. So I
Oh,
think we're gonna start it together.
Mindhunter
So
is
we're
awesome.
gonna watch.
It is awesome, and that.
We're
Go ahead.
how romantic. We're gonna watch serial killers together.
Aw, how sweet. You know, but the casting in that
But
show is awesome. The art direction is amazing. I mean,
yeah.
it down to the ashtrays that they use and everything. It's better than Mad Men, in my opinion, in the way that they take that time period of the late '60s. In there, the costuming, everything, the performances are great. Uh,
Hmm.
it's David Fincher, so
Yeah.
he usually doesn't mess up. Um,
No.
and I found out, Fincher was the one that started House of Games, speaking of Netflix, or House of Cards,
Yeah.
which was, one of their best ones for a while. So,
Well, and speaking of Fincher, this is going to sound funny. We were talking in our last episode. Well, actually, this is not our last episode, but the last episode I listened to was our Sunshine episode,
oh,
and we were talking about how maybe there could potentially be a version of Event Horizon out there that was edited, not edited harshly, and may even be better than the mess they released.
yes.
Similar to we've talked about other movies where that has happened. And David Fincher is known for Alien 3, which was a horribly mutilated movie, and there are multiple releases of it as well.
Yeah, and and
So,
and I still hold to my opinion that I did not mind 3. I thought it had some really cool stuff to it and a really good new direction for the franchise. Um,
yeah,
so so I actually liked that. But yeah, Fincher's great and he does a great job. So Mindhunter I definitely recommend. But there's also, just go to
yeah.
I'm sure everybody does. I don't know anybody who really doesn't have Netflix or use Netflix.
Yes, and
Um,
all you listeners out there, follow us into these rabbit hole vortexes that David and I tend to fall into in these
Yes,
introductions.
always. I think you'll enjoy the adventure at least, and then let us know about it.
Yeah,
Email us or message us and let us know what you think. Um,
yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of rabbit holes, Tim, what are we doing today? What's this week's podcast about?
Well, I do believe we will be following the rabbit
Hmm.
into a vastly different, horrific hole with a 2014 film entitled "It Follows."
Yes.
It Follows is was kind of a surprise success for its writer director. I don't think they had any intentions of it being as successful as it was. Ironically, because a lot of it was inspired and influenced by John Carpenter, and the same thing happened with him in Halloween. Very small budget movie blows up and becomes a huge success. If let's see if I can give a little background. Basically, it is about an entity that stalks you slowly. Um, if it has been passed on to you through sex. Um, which is a totally original concept. I mean, we were talking about, originality in films. This
Hmm.
has never been done, and it's not been done really since. I mean, it has been done metaphorically, but not literally. And this is a literal movie. If you have sex with someone and this entity is on your back, you're going to pass it on to the person you have sex with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, what do you think about that, David? That's kind of crazy, isn't it?
Well, I had two or three things. One, I was a state from the get-go that I found this movie scarier than most of the zombie movies I've seen. I found this movie extremely tense, very scary. The subject matter itself is subliminally, I think, terrifying to everybody. I mean, that whole subtext underneath it of if you have sex, you could die. So it's very, STD, AIDS, all of those horrors that we have of somehow our pleasures will come back to haunt us kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a guilt thing.
Yeah, is under there, and especially taking it from the, I guess for our listeners, if you haven't seen it, first of all, go see the damn thing. Why do you listen to us until you've seen it? Anyway.
Yeah, it's been 5 years, for God's sake.
But hopefully you have seen it. But basically the synopsis of the story is we follow a young girl named Jay, a college student, and she has sex, and this entity starts following her, and it's all about how she and a group of friends deal with it. And told in a really striking visual style, which is great. But that whole subtext the whole time bothered me, seen from her point of view, because literally the whole movie almost is from her point of view. We very rarely have a scene without her or a viewpoint without her. And the guilt she shows, the temptation she has, all of that are really, really strong and well done, I think. What would you overall aesthetics of it? You said it was this director. I'd never heard of this director before, and I'd never seen anything he's done.
His name is David Robert Mitchell.
Yep.
And shoot me, but I didn't write down anything else he's done. But it's probably because I was not really that interested in it.
Well,
that sounds terrible, doesn't it?
I looked it up, and I mean he's a writer as well as a director, like you said, and he's
right.
But he tends to then direct the things that he writes. So, and the only other one that I could find online of any merit was one called Under the Silver Lake, which
I saw that. It
looked like a pseudo.
It sounds like a USA movie, doesn't it?
Yeah, it did. It sounded exactly like one. I was going. Yeah, I don't know about this one.
Thriller with nobody in it that that probably isn't that great. That's what it sounds like. But anyway.
Right. Totally agree with that.
And that's totally me projecting. I'm terribly sorry, David Robert Mitchell, for being such an ass.
No, do it. Be ass. That's what we do.
I can give you a little background on It Follows.
Sure.
From his writing perspective.
Okay.
It was derived from a nightmare that I guess it may have been a continuing nightmare of his, of being pursued by a slow predator. So, I mean, everyone has crazy nightmares, whether they're being chased or whether they're falling off a cliff or whatever. But apparently he had one where he just felt something was pursuing him at a slow pace and that he had to get away. And that's where the whole idea came from.
Yeah, and it's brilliant. It is such, we talked when we did Nightmare, we talked about the fact that idea, Wes Craven's idea of if you go to sleep, you could die, became terrifying because everybody has fought sleep before. Everybody's been fatigued, and to know that you have to stay awake, blah, blah, blah. This one is like to know you have to keep moving or you have to pass it on or something. It will catch you eventually. No matter where you go, it will catch you. And that relentlessness.
And you don't necessarily know what it'll look like either.
See, that was the other thing that really got me and really made me really creeped out. Scenes where the guy was going. And also the fact that you're the only one that sees it. So you constantly have to go to other people and go, do you see that? Are you seeing that person over there? Because, but it's a type of horror that I really like. And I think it was in Dance Macabre that King in his intro was talking about the old cliche story of, scary is not you're sitting in your chair and a monster jumps out and grabs you. Scary is you're sitting in your chair and you hear a knock on the door and you go to the door and open it, nothing's there. You go close the door, go back, sit in your chair, and you hear the knock again. That's scary.
Right.
And
that's also Hill House.
Yeah. Well, and that's
we talked about that in that episode of Hill House.
Yeah, and that's This is that kind of thing where, and I love the way the director does it. He does these, we'll get to directing style in a second, but yeah, the subliminal thing of you are being stalked. I mean, that is a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. I would like to say background before we move on to like cast and director, that it got 96% certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a very high mark if you follow like Rotten Tomato reviews, which I do.
Okay. Well, that's good.
It was, Rotten Tomatoes is a website that reviews movies. I'm not sure if you
use it. I know.
And then it was shot for 1.3 million and made over 20 in the first year. So that's where I was saying, it's kind of an homage to John Carpenter, and then it turned out to be almost a literal homage as far as the success of the film, too.
Definitely. I mean, we can go ahead and key all the way through it because, we know one of the keys was Halloween and Carpenter. It is definitely has an homage to that. And, of course, to...
Yeah, I ran out of room for writing keys. So when we get to keys, I'll still have some, I guarantee you.
Oh, great. Well, let's talk about the director then, and then we'll go to cast. But like I said,
okay.
I never...
And the style?
Yeah. His style set up from the very beginning was very, a key for me would be very Kubrick, because he starts with an opening shot, which is essentially a 360 shot from the center of a street, watching a girl run out of her house and run down the street, talk to somebody, run around the other side of the street and go back into her house, then come back out, get into a car and drive away. And it's so well framed and so well done. And I thought, oh, okay, well, cool. He's done that whole, Curzon thing of let's open the movie with a single shot that's kind of long and is kind of gimmicky. Great, cool. But he keeps doing that all the way through it and has great shots, especially these whole kind of, it's almost very, I call it Kubrick because it's also impersonal. Kubrick had a tendency in all of his films, it felt like you were
cold, the
voyeur, and you were coldly just watching what was happening. And he does that a lot in this film. And a lot of these whole, the other one I remember, the other shot I remember is when they're going to the school to get information. And it starts in a hallway looking out a window, and you see a building way across the lawn and a girl walking toward the camera. And the camera pans, and we see our heroes walking down the hallway and go into a room. And it pans around, and we see that the girl is, we're still, same shot, but we see the girl still walking closer to us. And we pan back, and we close in on them, and it's like, get out of there. Somebody's walking towards you.
Yeah. I know. And you're always looking to see if someone is behind them.
Yeah.
Even if they're like in a crowded school or something.
And he does it all the time.
Following them?
Yeah, he does it all the time, and have people just randomly walking toward the camera, and you go, oh my God, that's us, or walking toward them. And that again reinforces to me, if I had this affliction or this curse, that would drive me batty. That would just drive me crazy.
Yeah, I know we were joking earlier about him not really having a big resume, and I made fun of the title of that other film, but I really should watch it because he has got a sense of style. I mean, I think this movie, there is nothing in this movie that wasn't there intentionally. So he knows what he's doing. He's got the goods to be a really, really good director with a long list of films.
Yeah, I agree. And he tells his stories very visually, but also, we talk about, we don't want to be spoon-fed a lot of stuff all the time. But
Mm-hmm.
he,
That.
I remember the scene where we're just getting to know the characters because we meet Jay really at the pool because she has a
Mm-hmm.
pool in her backyard. But then and then we have a scene with her and her friends. So we kind of establish the exposition of, okay, these are friends. But then her getting ready for the date is shot with we only see her face through the mirror. And the way he frames her and the mirror and then the pictures on the mirror of like her dad or her in the pool and all of that. And the way she's getting ready. And we know all this this seems like it's an important date. I don't really know. Something seems to be, kind of thing. It's all we read into it as we visualize it. So it's very well told.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've got a few notes that I'm not sure if you had, but as far as like his style,
Uh-huh.
he shot predominantly with wide angle lenses
Mm-hmm.
to make it seem more expansive and more intimidating, which it does.
Oh, yeah.
It works.
Definitely. It makes you want to look around
Um,
the peripheral and look at the sides where
yeah.
people could be walking,
Hmm. And I wrote down it's a killer atmosphere. It's odd and it's unsettling because it's very quiet. There's not always a lot of dialogue. There's just a lot of expansive shots.
Uh-huh.
Which, like, I didn't even get the Kubrick thing, but you're right. I mean, Kubrick used to do that as well, especially in The Shining.
And he would frame things like one of the other ones I remember is on that date, that first date or the date before the sex or whatever. There's a shot of them in a restaurant. This is after the movie theater, and he's gotten scared because he sees somebody that she doesn't, so he knows it's following. But they're in a restaurant, and we don't even hear the dialogue. We just like hear the restaurant ambiance, and we don't hear them talking to each other, but we're slowly zooming in on her. And as we're zooming in on her, we see in the background somebody across the street walking toward them. And
Yeah.
it's just the way when she leans forward, we see the person. Then when she leans back, she blocks our view. And you're like going, no, look to your left. There's somebody walking. It's just well done.
Yeah. Oh my God, there's somebody walking.
I mean, yeah, they would end up putting me in an institution because I go, people are walking. They're walking around me.
Oh my Lord, that's funny.
But yeah, and other things
So
he
I don't.
did direction-wise. I loved and I remember the first time I watched this movie, I thought, ooh, I don't know if that was too much or not. But then this time I went, yeah, I like it. When Jay's boyfriend essentially chloroforms her, and then she wakes up
Yeah.
tied up to a wheelchair because he wants to help save her life by telling her the whole story. So it's a great way to do the exposition, too, from a writing perspective. But he keeps the camera locked on the wheelchair. So when she shakes, the camera shakes. And when he moves the wheelchair, it's just looking at her the whole time, which was really a cool idea.
Mm-hmm. I often wondered, that's pretty severe. Why would you do that? And then I realized he doesn't think she'll believe him.
Right.
So he wants her to see it.
Yes.
Before he lets her go. Because he doesn't want to kill her. But essentially, he seals her fate, which is not a nice thing to do.
Yeah, but sometimes you can't help that with the sex, kind of thing.
Yeah. And if you just go have sex with a prostitute, they're just going to get murdered and you're not going to know it. And it's just going to come back after you.
There is that. The only hope with the prostitute is that they'll have sex with somebody else. You know what I mean? So they'll pass it on.
Yeah,
but then
I hadn't really thought about
but
that.
then that John will take it to their wife or whatever, and then maybe or another prostitute. Who knows? Yeah, I thought. But I also thought that it made logical sense too of tying her to a wheelchair. So even though she wasn't believing him, he could get her out of there. He wasn't having to pull her or say, come, let's run this way and everything else. So he had her escape route. So I thought that was kind of cool. Even though, like you said, it's kind of a dick thing to do to have sex in the first place. But then again, if you don't, you're cursed. So, I mean, what do you think about that? Let's talk about that because this is very psychosexual all the way through it. I mean, from the very beginning shot, the young girl who ends up dying essentially in the very second scene is in like a nightgown and high heels. So very objectified female, and she's running in the streets and crying and obviously panicked, and then ends up driving away and it catches her and she dies. But there's all this psychosexual of attraction can be a bad thing all the way through it. What do you think?
Well, I think that very much, and this is a key to the Friday the 13th movies, where sex equals death. Usually the people having sex or the next one's killed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to capture a segment of your audience that is that age, that is having those doubts and fears and curiosities about, what's going to happen when I do this.
Right. Definitely.
So, I mean, it's very smart as far as, capturing a youthful audience.
Yes.
And I think Halloween was very similar, I mean, they're both scary movies, so they're going to attract that age of an audience anyway. But now you've got characters in a movie that you can actually relate to because they're going through the same thing.
Right. Well, and the other key for me is nightmare. This whole group of friends who sees the evil, but nobody else around them does.
Yeah, there's one scene in there that is almost identical to Nightmare. It just kind of threw me for a loop that I didn't see it the first time.
Which one?
Yeah. The one where she's calling across the street, wake up, wake up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I definitely.
I was like, and his name is Greg, and in the Nightmare movie, his name is Glenn, and she's going, Glenn!
Yeah.
She's going, Greg! I was like, this is Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, and the other thing, too, of just attraction being bad sort of thing. I mean, we know from the first scene that Paul, essentially the second lead, the male in it, the best friend sort of thing, likes her. And we can tell he's attracted to her. He wants to be with her, everything else, all the way through.
And he's the nerd.
And he's a nerd.
Yeah, the little nerdy guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I was confused about one thing writing-wise. I really couldn't tell the relationships of the other two girls. Kelly was the one that was always around.
Kelly's her sister.
So Kelly's her sister.
Yeah.
And then the other girl with the funky compact.
I can talk cast really briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because there's not a lot about the cast that I know. There wasn't other people, that were up for roles or anything because it was a low budget movie. Jay, who is the lead, the blonde, that's short for Jamie Lee Curtis, by the way.
Okay.
Her sister's name is Kelly, and in real life, Jamie Lee Curtis has a sister named Kelly.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm telling you, all this stuff was intentional. I mean, every little detail of this movie is intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Paul, who is the nerd that has the hots for her, and Hugh, who is the, I guess, stud or whatever that passed it on to her.
What about the other girl?
The other girl's name is Yara, and she is just a friend. I think a friend of the younger sister because they're always together with the nerdy guy.
Yeah.
So I think that's her sister's group of friends that is trying to help her, along with another guy her age from high school. I think his name's Greg.
Yeah.
Yeah. His name is Greg. I said that earlier.
Yeah.
And that he's more her age. So there's like probably a couple of years difference in the group of three, Jay and Greg and Hugh. So there's like two groups of three essentially, but they're not necessarily on screen at the same time. And they're probably separated by a year or two.
Yeah, I mean, Jay's obviously the older sister. She's in college. For all we know, the other ones are still in high school or whatever, or just, or at least a couple of years. I got that impression. Yeah, like you said.
I assumed they were all in high school. And this is another thing you mentioned earlier, and we've mentioned in countless podcasts, is I love this ambiguity. I like being able to put these things together without having to be spoon-fed.
Agreed. Agreed.
too.
And okay, I've got so many ideas, but ambiguity. There's also a lot of production design ambiguity in this, which really gives it an otherworldly, nightmare-y kind of weirdness. I mean, you've got princess phones on the wall, which dates it to, you know, a certain time period, but then the girl has something that I've never seen before, which is like a cell phone that's in, or an e-reader that's in a compact.
It's in a makeup compact.
Yeah.
It's weird, man. And they're all driving really old automobiles.
Right. They drive older automobiles, but then their clothes are kind of nondescript. They're kind of non-era.
I read that he did all this so that you couldn't date it.
Okay, there you go.
He did this to give it that timeless feel. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all intentional.
That was really great. But cast wise, okay. My question then is, I mean, we see all of them together at the beginning. Obviously, the two girls hang out a lot, Yara and Kelly, and Paul just kind of hangs with them because either they're in the same class or they grew up near each other or whatever. We obviously
same neighborhood, yeah.
We obviously understand later on we have. You know, she goes to an ice cream shop, and Kelly and Paul work there together. So they also work together too, which also gave me the impression that maybe they're not in high school, or maybe they're just out of high school, or maybe they're first year of college, something like that. Anyway, but we don't know. But then later on, she comes in and sits with Paul on the couch because he's going to be Mr. Warrior and stay up all night and protect her. Ha ha, kind of like Nightmare, very Nightmare Johnny Deppish. Except he doesn't fall asleep. But she comes up and she says, you know, you were my first kiss. And he says, you were mine, you know, kind of thing. And she goes, and then you kissed Kelly. And he kind of acts embarrassed and says, yeah. And she goes, yeah, you told me. Because I watched this scene 3 times just to make sure. She says, yeah, she told me. There's a big pause. She goes, you kissed your sister. And he goes, yeah. And I was going, okay, wait, Kelly is Paul's sister? I thought Kelly was Jay's sister. And I don't understand. And maybe he did that again, to your point. Maybe he did that to be ambiguous or to throw everything off. Or maybe sister
I didn't catch that.
Was a reference to something else. Yeah, I watched it 3 times just to make sure because it didn't make sense to me.
And she says, you kissed your sister?
Right, not you kissed my sister. She says, you kissed your sister.
I don't know.
Or maybe it was a flub that she did that nobody called anything. I don't know.
It could have been a flub because I read in some trivia that he specifically wanted her name to be Kelly because Jamie Lee Curtis had a sister named Kelly.
Yeah, and I think that makes perfect sense.
Clarifies that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes perfect sense. I think, but cast-wise, so we were talking cast. Okay, so I think the lead girl, I think her name's Maika Monroe is
Makia. I think it's Maika Monroe.
Is awesome. She is. I love her all the way through it. Not only am I just attracted to her because she's beautiful and pretty and great, but she's a great actress. I also think she underplays all these scenes really well. It would be very easy to be the hysterical, screaming, I don't know what's going on kind of girl, and she's not. She restrains everything and does it really well. And
if I had to lump her into a category of actresses that I admire, I would say she's somewhere in between Kirsten Dunst and Jennifer Lawrence.
Okay. I
get the same feeling from both, or all 3 of those actresses.
Yeah, I was surprised doing research that I hadn't seen her in more stuff. She's really good. But ironically, I did see her, you know, because I'm a science fiction guy. So a few months ago, there was a new, never heard of it before movie on Netflix called Tau, T-A-U, which was about... Okay, talk about weird bents here, but it was about a girl who's imprisoned by a sentient AI in a house. So I thought, ooh, cool.
Yeah.
I want to see that. Cool. A girl being tortured by a computer house.
It sounds like Demon Seed.
Yes, I was just about to say that. You took it. Great. Good for you.
Dean Koontz, all you listeners.
Pretty much not a bad film. It was pretty good. It had a couple of logic gaps that were weird, but the performance was really good because mostly the movie was this girl by herself in this house having to react, to a voice coming from the walls from this computer. And turns out the girl was her. She was in that movie. She was the lead in that and did a great job.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then the other cast too, like Paul, I really thought he was good. And I thought I'd seen him in other stuff too, but I looked him up and didn't recognize anything else he's done. But he was a really good actor in it.
He could have been in Nightmare on Elm Street. He reminded me of the thuggish type guy that was in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he could have been a nerd in almost anything. He plays that nebbish kind of character really, really well. But I even liked...
Oh, no, wait. No, I'm sorry. You're talking about Paul. I was talking about Greg. My bad.
Oh, no. Yeah. Greg could have been Nightmare, definitely. But Paul to me was the nerdish little geek guy.
He looks like Seth Green, kind of.
Yeah. But then I liked Kelly and Yara too. I thought both of them played those scenes really well and acted. I mean, had a chemistry about them that they were old friends. So it worked really well from a casting perspective. I even liked the way your Greg guy was played because, he was obviously the boy next door, i.e. across the street, but he had obviously watched them a little bit or knew about them or whatever. We don't find out till later that they actually had slept together in high school because she mentions that. But he's the playboy, the rogue, I've got a car, that kind of stuff, but didn't play him cliche like the guy in Nightmare that I don't like. The boyfriend who's like, yo, Adrian, or whatever. I got a knife.
Yeah.
He played him really sympathetic, really straight. Yeah. He played him really straight, really sympathetic, all that, which was cool. And
yeah, I got the sense that they all grew up together.
Definitely.
Except for maybe Hugh. Hugh is probably the only outsider.
Definitely.
And he's the one that passes it to her.
So
they're kind of like a family. Maybe that's what she meant by your sister, is they grew up like a family.
Yeah, okay, I'll buy that one. Okay, I'm giving that one. That works. The lead, whether it's Maika, whatever, Jay, she reminds me of like a young but prettier Katie Sackhoff, the girl who played Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica remake, and she's done a lot of science fiction now. But she reminds me of her, those high cheekbones and the way her eyes look, everything. It looked a lot like, she reminded me of her in it. What else?
Cast-wise, like I said, I don't have much, but I will tell you that the girl in the very first shot that gets murdered, the one, we were talking about the 360 shot, did you notice what her name was?
No, I didn't.
Her character? Annie.
Oh.
There's an Annie in Halloween.
There's another Halloween right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that was intentional too.
And the note I have on her is I thought she did, first of all, I thought she was really skilled to be able to run through grass and concrete with those high heels on. But second, I liked the way she played the goodbye to Dad, and then I liked the makeup of her death with the leg being broken backwards. That was really...
That was really weird. It reminded me of like Jaws.
Yep. That was going to be my key. Sorry. That's okay. No,
I didn't even write that down. It's just in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh yeah, girl dead on the beach with just a weird body part reminded me of Jaws. That was my key for Jaws. Yeah, I did. But I also thought another thing. It's partially casting, but also partially direction too. Is you never really got to see the mom's face, her mother.
You don't really see any of them.
No,
any parent.
Right. Well, you see his parent at the door when she's the monster, when she's actually the entity or whatever.
And you see like pictures of them, and you see like, I guess, her dad naked on the roof of the house.
Yeah, but I didn't get Dad from that, but I guess that's who it was.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe it was. I wasn't sure.
It might have been. I know that it was Dad in the pool. That was Dad.
Okay.
But I don't think that he connected that enough, really. Maybe a brief flashback with her and her dad or something would have helped with that. But I do like the overall casting and the fact that, again, we're in this kid's point of view. We're watching them and their story, or young adults' point of view. We're watching their story, and the adults don't really get it or matter. You know, the most real adult involvement you get is a brief scene with the police, and then the teacher in the room, and then one scene.
That's right out of Nightmare on Elm Street too.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then one scene where the mom is obviously talking to a friend, and the rest of it is all them. I mean, all the kids, the whole movie. So I thought that was very well done. Another big plus. So casting a plus. Do you have anything else with casting wise?
No.
Okay.
I've got some more elements that kind of keep the movie out of time, but we don't have to go to those right now. If you have something.
Well, I just have one little brief thing as far as a plus, because direction and writing I like for this. I think it is really great for this film. Acting, of course, and his casting of these people was really good. And the other thing I liked about it, and I think elevates it above a lot of B horror movies, is the music. I thought the music was really good for this. It was very atonal.
That's one of my favorite things. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very atonal.
There are parts of it. Yeah, parts of it sound like Halloween. Just like a little keyboard trill with a pipe.
And lots of little synth themes that he does. Sounds very Halloween. I was going to use that as a key, but all the way through, it's a good mix of tonalities and music, and when he uses it, when he doesn't. It's like you said, there are entire scenes where they talk and there's no music, and it's just either not really them talking. It's just looking around or seeing or being very voyeuristic watching them.
And whenever the creature is near, it's like a drum. It's like, boom.
Yes, it's just a drone, a thump, like it's coming. Yeah. I've got in my notes great pulse in the music when the entity shows. So yeah. Well, what else? So what do you?
It's very 80s. Yeah, it's very 80s sounding.
It is, which again adds to a timely weirdness in this.
And we can segue.
Yeah, do that.
Because I've got some other examples. I don't know this for sure, and I wish I would have known before I watched the film to look for it. But I read in trivia that red or pink will foreshadow the coming of the creature.
That is correct.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Because
I don't have any. Like when they're in the movie theater, what was red or pink?
Well, I don't remember the movie theater per se, but I do remember the beach scene. Her bathing suit is pink.
Okay, because most of it's shot in blue. That's why I was wondering. I would think it would be noticed.
Her underwear in The Attack is pink.
Okay.
So when she first sees, his mom or whatever the entity looks like, or whoever the woman is chasing him, when she first sees it, it's pink. There's another one right before she sees. I remember there was one right before she sees one, and her bra strap. She's wearing white, but then her shirt moves and her bra strap is pink, and then you see the creature in the background. So yeah, I went back and looked at 2 or 3 of those because I remember researching that with Sixth Sense, because that was what Shyamalan did in Sixth Sense, was there's always red before the ghosts. So so I think that's like you said, I think a lot of this is very intentional and very, very brilliant in the way he crafts it.
Well, and continuing with that theme, the girl, I think it's it's not in school, but at least it's on the compact, and it may be in school as well. They're reading The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I can't say his name. Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
Yes. And I don't know that work, but I'm pretty sure it must be symbolic, just as much as Hamlet was when they read it aloud in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, because remember the quote she says, when, and again, one of those where something happens in the screenplay, we don't really know why, but we don't really care because it doesn't affect our overall, viewing or story follow. Because Yara's in the hospital for something. We don't know. It could be tonsillitis. We don't know, but she's in the hospital and she's reading her compact and she's reading Idiot. And the quote she says is that it's about fear and the fact that you're more scared when you realize this is the end of your life and you're about to die than you are even in pain or anything else. It's when you realize your soul is about to go away that is really terrifying and painful. And I went, oh, okay, well, that just sums up the whole subtext of the movie, too. So,
Right.
yeah.
I think it's funny that they are watching very oddly chosen films. Like in the movie theater, they're watching Charade, the old Alfred Hitchcock movie, which is, charade is, something is not what you think it is. Well, somebody following you might not be who you think they are.
Right.
And then when they're at home, they're watching that old B movie Killers from Space.
Yeah, with Peter Graves. Yeah.
And you talk about a key. I mean, that's a Johnny Has the Keys key.
Oh, yeah.
Because that movie is public domain, and I used the image of one of those bug-eyed aliens on our shirt.
Yep. I thought I had that. I said a meta key reference there because.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that one.
And I'm not sure what it has in relevance to the film, other than it keeps it in an undefinable time space, unless you want to just, use the whole eye allegory of things are not what they seem because of the big bug-eyed aliens or whatever. I don't know. I'm not sure if there's relevance to that. I'm sure it's there for a reason, though.
Well, yeah. Why are they watching these 50s, really, really low-budget 50s movies?
Well, and it's a Halloween reference, too, because in Halloween, they're watching movies that are really old, too. They're watching The Thing and some other ones as well.
Well, because the second movie, really, really trivia, is Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Monsters, which, I mean, I don't even think you can find anymore. It is such an ancient film.
I am so glad you knew what that was, because I could not figure it out, and I could not find out.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, what is this other movie?
Yeah, I recognized it, and I was going, okay, I know that's monsters because they're eating each other. Which monster is it? So I ended up looking it up and finding it. But yeah, it was Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Monsters, which I think I've only seen once, and that was back, decades ago. Also, the televisions themselves. All the televisions are old, like 70s and 80s console televisions.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like it was something he could do that was really cool but not expensive. To make that movie look different.
Mm-hmm. And it obviously wasn't intention. I mean, I don't think he just said, hey, does anybody have any old TV? I mean, he had to go and find those to make that work. And that
just
works.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Salvation Army, something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only other thing I have that I thought was of note as far as in connection with the film subject matter is that when they're playing cards, they're playing Old Maid. And the object of that game is not to get something that you don't want.
Yeah, pass it on, baby.
Or pass it on. Exactly. And I was like, holy cow, man, this guy has really thought about this movie. These are details that are, most people would overlook.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, and
that was some of the others I had.
What do I have? I have
and then I've got awards and keys. So
I thought well, I've got your the only one I've got that's new is I talked about that other shot with the it's another 360 shot, but we're watching the girl in the white jacket come from across the lawn at the school toward them as they're trying to find out information about the boy that slept with her. And it turns around twice, and we see her getting closer and closer, and then they walk away. It cuts to them getting in a car and about to drive away, and through the windshield away from them, you can see the girl in the white walking toward them. And I thought that was a great tie-in to the two. So if you even thought for the first one, oh, I'm just being freaky because just because somebody's walking doesn't mean that they're the monster. And then suddenly, yes, they are. That is them too.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, and it's also what I was saying earlier is you're always looking at people in the background to determine whether or not one of them may be a little different.
Definitely.
Or walking towards you.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's creepy.
So what about awards? You said you had awards.
There's scads of them, so
Really?
I'm only gonna touch upon a few. Yeah. It has won 25 and it's been nominated for 41. Now some of those are, more relevant, some of those are just, little fringe things, as far as horror and sci-fi or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as notable, it was the winner of the Austin Fantastic Fest for film and screenplay. It also won a Bram Stoker Award, which is the Horror Writers Association I used to be a member of, for best screenplay.
Good.
And it won the Fango Chainsaw Award for wide release.
Okay.
So those are the ones I have. And like I said, it's scads of others, but a lot of them are small that you've never heard of.
Right.
So
what about Keys? Since you have a plethora, you go first, and then I'll give you mine, then you can wrap up with all of yours, because I'm sure you have more than moi.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a big one that's kind of fun. This movie was shot in Detroit.
Yes.
As we know, Sam and his friends came from Detroit to Morristown, Tennessee to shoot The Evil Dead.
Correct.
The theater where they go to see Charade is the Redmond Theater where The Evil Dead premiered in Detroit.
Oh, great, Key. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was intentional, I'm sure. Or at least he wanted it to be there if he could get it there.
Yeah. I agree. That would make sense.
Some of these I've already talked about. Obviously, we've talked about John Carpenter and Nightmare on Elm Street a lot.
Yep.
And I do think it's interesting that both of those movies have the main heroine in a classroom seeing something out a window.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, actually, Nancy may not see something out a window, but she's sitting by one.
Well, and also Nancy sees her friend in the hallway, though. But yeah.
Yeah, she sees her friend in the hallway. Yeah.
When I watched it this time, I thought, okay, if she runs into a girl asking about a hall pass, I'm going to be really weirded out. But because she goes down the hall and the old lady keeps chasing her. So that's when it really hits her. Oh my gosh, this is real. So I thought that was great.
Nobody else can see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was cool.
And that's like Freddy too. I mean, nobody else would have seen Freddy either.
Right. So that makes sense. That invisible foe that is chasing you and stalking you.
Ironically enough, Mitchell, we've been saying, Wes Craven, John Carpenter all over this film, but Mitchell cites his influences as Carpenter and Romero.
Okay.
Which the only thing I get from Romero is just the slow zombie approach of someone following you. I didn't really get a lot of Romero out of it. Did you?
Well, repetitively, you have this group all stuck together somewhere trying to protect themselves from something outside. So if you wanted to go that way, you could see Romero, whether it's
like in the shed when they're trying to keep the door. Yeah, I could see that.
Or in the bedroom where they're always putting something under the door, a chair against the doorknob and all that sort of thing. So there is that kind of, it's out there and we're trying to keep it from getting inside kind of thing. I have, of course, I have those. We talked about Halloween, The Shining. I think a lot of that cold, voyeuristic look at things. And then to me, I kind of got a reference when he was mounted the camera on the wheelchair is kind of like following Danny on the tricycle, on the big wheel.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of thing. And then I have the the pool showdown at the end reminded me of Let the Right One In, because that had a pool showdown too. So it
Oh
reminded me
my
of
gosh, I
that.
didn't even think of that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like a public pool in a very creepy building.
Yeah. Yeah. And with a
But
variety of appliances from all different time periods too. So you got that weird ambiguity of time again too. I mean, they had like old plug-in dial radios, but then blow dryers and stuff. So
uh-huh.
it was really interesting. But okay, so while we're there, just stop for a second before Keys. What did you think of the ending?
The very ending.
Well, the last two. So we have this huge, long, tense, suspenseful shot as she slowly crawls toward the edge of the pool, and we're all thinking, "Oh my God, don't do that! No, don't do that! Someone's going to jump out and grab you and put you, whatever." And all she sees is
Uh-huh.
this huge plethora of blood.
Uh-huh.
Then it cuts, and we have Paul and her both in white. So you have that kind of angelic-y kind of look. They're just holding hands walking down the street. But if you notice, they pass a guy in a red jacket, and behind them you can see somebody following.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just goes, and we're done. So did you like it, not like it? What?
I was left a little shocked because I was like, oh, it's one of those that doesn't really end. Which you could interpret that way, is that it's still going on, it's not over.
Mm,
Or you could interpret it as to, since they're both dressed in white, maybe they're both dead, and that's why they're not concerned with what's following them.
could be, yeah.
Um, I mean, there's various ways you could interpret it. Um, you could also interpret it from a director or writer standpoint in that I don't have a good ending. I just need to end this. Yeah, and just make it, ambiguous like the rest of the
He
movie.
decided to end it like Stephen King ends a lot of his books. Just, okay, we're done. You know, I
Actually, Stephen King's guilty of overdoing endings. He puts too much in there, and that's when it becomes kind of baloney.
Well, I did.
But
I did find it a bit abrupt. I mean, it was just ka-chunk and we're done, kind of thing. I would have liked, to your point, maybe if he is making a statement of they're dead, so they don't care, and that's why they're together. Maybe even add a little bit of that, that kind of the last scene of Nightmare, where it's kind of got a haziness to the lens.
or
So
they
we
see
don't.
the other people that have died,
Yeah, or
like
maybe,
Greg.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Maybe they just
yeah. So
wave at
and,
Greg or something. So
yeah.
it's that might have been
So
cool.
that is a nightmare key. I mean, it is very Nightmare on Elm Street if you
Or even if you want to go more,
interpret it that way.
yeah, or if you even want to go more cliche, then have them pass the camera, but keep kind of focused on that person way a block away who's walking right towards us. And just
Hmm.
let that linger for a little bit before you do the abrupt cut. I just thought
Hmm.
that was kind of odd the way he ended it, to have such, 98% so good, and then you just kind of go, I'm done, kind of thing.
Hmm.
But, okay, Keith, sorry to interrupt. That just reminded me of, because you said,
Oh no, you're fine. I have a slight literary key.
yeah,
It's not actually, it's a blatant literary key. Is the other poem, or the poem, I guess, that they are quoting is the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, which is T.S. Eliot,
that's
and
in the
I
classroom,
that
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And I was confusing it with Dostoevsky. That's in the house, but yeah, you're right. It's in the classroom, and it. I mean, I'm familiar with that poem. I had to study in college. The only thing that I remember about that poem is a reoccurring couplet, which is, I wrote it down, in the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And I was like, is it because of that reoccurring couplet that's in that movie? Because it's a reoccurring thing when they pass it on. That's the only
Huh.
literary
That's good.
connection I could get from that, unless somebody out there knows more and wants to let us know.
Yeah, I could see that. I
Uh,
did not know that. So, and I didn't
mhm.
recognize that poem at all, of course. Of course, poetry isn't my forte, as they say.
Well, and I think in one of my earlier blog entries, probably on our website, I may make reference to something coming and going, and in parentheses I put talking of Michelangelo because that couplet is always stuck in my head.
Okay.
I wrote that there's kind of a Scooby-Doo key with the ending and them trying to throw those appliances in the pool. It's like this is the craziest idea ever. To maybe we can electrocute it.
Yeah, that was kind of a very Scooby-Doo. I could see that. It was very kid-centric of, yeah, can she get out in time before we electrocute her? We don't know, but we're just going to make this plan work. Yeah, I thought that was curious. But it also got her in a bathing suit, which I didn't mind either. So that was okay.
There's a good it key for Stephen King. I mean,
Oh, definitely.
Kids dealing with a monster that no one else can see.
Yep, I've got that
Same
in
thing.
mind. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got it. And it had
And there was one.
it had a Babadook kind of feel to me too, just from what I've read. I haven't seen that film, but that whole presence of something, that whole scary presence kind of feel reminded me of that.
I can't remember what scene it was, but there was a scene with a ball, and I started thinking of the Changeling.
Oh my gosh, I did the same thing, and that was a great jump scare. Great.
I can't remember what it was.
It's her after she's had the sex, and she's looking in the mirror, and she ends up pulling her underwear and looking down and everything else. And you're saying, is she ashamed? Is she upset? Is she seeing if there's a difference? Blah, blah, blah. And suddenly a ball hits the window. And she has to look out and sees a ball on the ground. Someone's thrown it, which you assume are those kids that were spying on her when she was in the pool.
Yeah, she's got some little stalkers that are kind of following her. And one of them ends up being the creature crawling through the door of the shed.
Oh, I didn't get that connection, but I could see that.
Yeah, one of those two kids. Yeah.
That was a good one. Yeah, that was good.
Mm-hmm. One of the more atmospheric things that this movie reminds me of, it's a key, but it's not a horror film key, is a movie Sofia Coppola did called The Virgin Suicides.
Mm-hmm.
It's set in the 70s, has Kirsten Dunst in it, who reminds me of Makia, and it's got a great soundtrack, but the music is very ethereal, and the photography is very languid, which to me, that's what this movie is too. It's got the same unreality kind of feel to it.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but I highly recommend it.
Okay. I'll have to look it up. I have not.
Yeah. It's not a horror movie. It's just a very unique movie. The Virgin Suicides.
Virgin Suicides.
Now, let's see. I also wrote, actually, this may be my last one. Yeah, because I already said the one about yelling Greg across the street. Is one that you've already mentioned, and it's the metaphor key of sex equals death. Apart from, I mean, it's not it's a metaphor in Nightmare on on Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
But in this, it's a literal thing. But it could also be metaphorical for, like you said, sexually transmitted diseases, AIDS, things that can kill you. I mean, we grew up when AIDS was a death sentence.
Oh, yeah.
And that was something I always feared. It's not as prevalent now, but it's still intimidating to kids that are just doing it for the first time.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So there's a metaphorical monster in there as well, associated with what happens when you have sex.
And what do you do with it then? If you do get, let's say, an STD or something like that, do you, I mean, that if you have sex with someone else, you could spread this. And so that becomes a huge, like we said at the beginning, it becomes a huge guilt factor, and obviously plays into it and the way this is done. What did you think of their ending, of their solution? Not the pool, the one after that.
I was going to say, I've already said that.
No, of their final escape or ending, or how to do it.
Are you talking about her having sex with Paul?
Well, remember, she had sex with Paul finally.
Right.
And I also like the fact that, she feels guilty both times, all 3 times she has sex. She has sex with Greg. It ends up killing Greg. But she thought,
Right.
I would have thought the same thing too. Greg's pretty much of a player. He's always talking to chicks and everything else, so he'll pass that on pretty quick. Don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't happen. Instead, he died.
Yeah.
Then she sees the guys on the boat, and although we don't see it, it's heavily implied that she has sex with them.
Yeah, and I guess they all got killed.
Right. So then she eventually after the pool, has sex with Paul, and then Paul is seen cruising prostitutes. So we assume he passed it on to a prostitute, which hopefully passed it on to, 20 other people, and she has her whole life ahead of her.
Maybe. I mean, you would always wonder, though.
I know. That's why I thought it was.
Back.
I thought it was really interesting because I knew the story. So this time when I watched it, in the scene on the first date, and they go to the movie theater and they're playing the game that she said she and her sister used to play, which was the trade game. So you pick somebody in a crowd, and then everybody has to guess who you think you would like to trade places with. And not Greg, but anyway, the boyfriend that she has, who ends up with it, picks the kid, and she says not the father or whatever, and he says yeah, because he's got his whole life ahead of him. Imagine him; he could do whatever he wants and be whatever he wants, and then he caps it with and he can pee anytime he wants or whatever, or something silly. But I thought it was interesting because he's cursed. And he's looking at a kid who has his whole life ahead of him and doesn't have to look behind his shoulder every day. So that's kind of cool.
Well, it's also kind of a message, don't have sex, kids.
Yeah.
Until you know you're ready or whatever.
Until you know you're ready, and the other
I
person.
wish I was a kid again and a virgin.
And the other person doesn't have a monster. Any other keys you have? I'm done. I'm keyed out. I'm keyless. I'm de-keyed.
I thought the boy crawling through the door reminded me of The Ring. That crawling thing in The Ring. Because it even screams.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? It's like, rah! Yeah.
Yeah, it could be Scream or it could be any of those ravenous kind of zombie things that, come through the doors like in 28 Days or whatever. The fast ones.
Yeah.
The scary ones.
Yeah. And back to what we started with, don't give a bad rap to zombies, man. There are scary zombie movies out there.
There are scary zombie movies, but I know that you have this horror thing of zombies, of I guess the undead coming to life, and not only that, the undead coming to life and wanting to eat you, kind of thing.
Two fears there: dead things and eaten alive.
Yeah. And I guess mine is that paranoia of being stalked, that suspense of something is coming. Mm-hmm. And that to me is scarier, or it has been scarier in movies that I've appreciated. This movie unnerves me. It's scary. It's same way I talk about in Exorcist. I'm scared when the camera's slowly zooming in on that room because we don't know what's going to be in that room, and I don't like the suspense. It's going to be scary in there. Something's coming. It's going to be bad. So I guess that really gets to me. I don't know if that's a classic fear or how you would classify that, but that really unnerves me. I did have one question left open. I just found at the beginning, that great shot of her getting ready for the date, and she's got her clothes on and she's putting her lipstick on and looking at herself in the mirror, and you get that whole thing of she's debating a question or not, which we find out is she going to have sex or not. But she takes a pill, and it's in a bottle, so I don't know. Is that her normal pill, or is that some kind of, did he have some kind of undercurrent of she has to take medication every day or whatever? Or I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. I have that question of what pill did she just take?
Birth control.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do remember that, but I didn't really put a lot of thought into it. It could have been one of those morning after things. I don't know.
Yeah, could have been. Well, how would you sum up the movie? If you had to tell somebody to watch this movie, how would you tell them to watch it, or why would you tell them to watch it?
I mean, there's a lot of movies that I tell people, as far as like a first time watch for a horror film, I kind of get a feel for their personality. I may not recommend Dawn of the Dead, to Dennis, but I would probably recommend this movie to him because it's intellectually stimulating. Um, and I'm using Dennis as an example, but I'm talking about anybody. I would highly recommend this movie, especially for someone that's just getting into horror, or somebody that is overexposed in horror but looking for something different and original. And I'm
Yes,
sure there's a lot out there. I mean, you've got all these slasher junkies you see on Facebook or whatever, and I'm like, look, there are scarier things out there. Give this movie a shot.
definitely. I agree with you.
But, and in this generation, though, that's, content overloaded, a lot of people want rapid fire and they may not enjoy it because it is not a fast movie. It is a slow dread.
Slow dread. That's a good. Yeah, it's a good way to describe it.
hmm Yeah, but I highly recommend it. It's well, for originality alone.
And it's got a hot
But
chick in it, so you can say hot chick. That's okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's got great music and tons of keys, lots of sex.
gifted director. Yeah, so it's got all that. Um, cool. Well, I
So that
guess
winds
we'll
us up.
we'll wind this one up and say thanks to everybody who listens to us. We so appreciate you guys listening to us week after week. Do make sure you friend us, like us, review us, give us great ratings, thumbs up and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, sign up for our newsletter on MailChimp. I don't do it that often, but I do send out things occasionally that'll let you know about things coming up. Dennis and I mean not Dennis, David and I are going to plan some maybe some excursions
Yeah.
in the upcoming year
Yep.
where we may go and do something live at a convention. We would like y'all to be a part of that, or at least come find us if you're there.
Yep.
Little things like that.
And we'd love to hear from you. We always love to hear from people, whether you agree with us or not. Let us know.
Yeah.
And Tim, I guess I will run into you next week when we'll cover another cool movie.
Yeah, I imagine it'll be science fiction this time.
It might be.
So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Have a good one, man.
All right, you too, man.
Bye.
Bye.